So, today in this particular B2B episode with Pesto, we are going to talk about how to thrive in the age of AI. And today I have with me Debarag Banerjee, who has over 25 years of experience in the AI and the ML industry, from infancy to today's hyperscale. He currently is serving as a chief AI and data officer at L&T Finance. He's super passionate about leveraging AI to solve real world problems. And he says that he's been fortunate enough to lead incredible teams in diverse sectors, from telecom and e commerce to healthcare and fintech, each time turning data into AI leverage products. So, this discussion is going to be more about how to better thrive with all the insights and knowledge that he has gotten so far in his journey. And we are absolutely, pleased and blessed to have him today talk to us about such a growing need in the market. So, welcome, Devarag. It is essentially, good to have you today. Talk to us and give your time.
Thank you, Barsha, and thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
Let's start with the real sense of today's discussion. Like, what significant changes do you see that generative AI as an entity has introduced to your industry in the past few years?
Yeah, so I've worked in a lot of industries before. Right now, I'm in the banking and financial sector, but before this, I was in everything from e-commerce to media streaming to telecom and many other things in between. Now, one one effect that we see of generative AI is that it's affecting all industries as opposed to being bespoke solutions just designed for one use case for one area in one industry, and this is a pretty significant change, and it's probably only going to accelerate from here on. So coming to financial, for example, there are the usual use cases, like for example, generative AI for better and more efficient customer service. Two less obvious use cases where we can use generative AI for better and quicker decision making on our underwriting for different loans, understanding the financial situation and customers' ability to pay at certain dates, certain amounts, etc., based on various different data sources. Even generative AI for non-traditional data sources like pictures and videos and satellite data and so on and so forth to try and come up with far sharper razors that separate good versus bad and the right correct decision on certain financial products, be they loans, be they other vehicles, and so on and so forth. So these are applications that are just the beginning, right? Like Sam Altman says that the models that you see today, including GPT-4o, are the dumbest models that you will ever see, right? So this will only accelerate, and I think we will sooner rather than later reach a stage where we actually cross the Turing bound, where AI starts becoming indistinguishable in its ability to read, listen, see, and understand and act uh, in the same way as a human.
Can you share a surprising way generative AI is being used that most people would not even think of?
I'll give an example from something that I was using earlier, and then I can hint at a few things that we are doing today, but because we haven't launched yet, they're not yet obvious. So one of the things I was doing earlier at my previous company is there are all these drive-through restaurants where people drive up and essentially they talk to a voice box, ordering burgers and the guy inside tries to upsell and say, "Do you want fries with that?" and so on and so forth, and has a conversation, and ultimately they drive out with a particular order that they place and get the food they want, right? So this is a classic area where you can easily you can replace that particular human with an AI service at the back, and we were able to, where that entire conversation happens using AI, and the order is placed using AI, and there's no human in the loop. So this is people have been talking about replacing white collar work with AI, and this is an example where it goes even farther, right? Which only demonstrates the power of this technology to be transformative in the way work is done, in lessening work that is done by humans. Coming to some of the financial use cases. Um, uh, there are a number of areas in this course that we are looking at where not only predictive but generative AI can actually help us understand and make decisions better. Few examples are a lot of so in my current job, we are essentially a financial lending company, and a big part of decision making is understanding all of the documents that come with a particular application for loan, and then figure out what is in it, and what are the potential risks, what are the areas where the applicant is presenting information that is quite fine and perfect, and this used to be done by humans looking through tons and tons of documents, and we're in the process of exploring whether generative AI can simplify that process drastically, and also remove some of the human bias of being too conservative or too risky in their decision making. Other less obvious things, even less obvious things, are there's actually a fair amount of field work involved in our line of business, especially when it comes to microfinance, which is an area where we are a pretty important player in India, and these are for creditors who are very low net worth in rural areas, where our people have to go and talk to them in person and understand them. And there's a lot of inefficiency in this and inaccuracies in understanding and making these decisions. And we are leveraging a lot of sources of information, including from pictures and videos and just written and oral conversations and so on and so forth. We are looking at them. We are not yet using them in seeing whether we can understand our customers better. So these are some of the areas that we're looking at.
What challenges and opportunities does Gen AI present to businesses today, considering the fact that you have already shared some surprising way how generative AI is being used, and how Gen AI got introduced? So we would love to know about the real-time challenges and opportunities Gen AI is posing to the market that maybe a lot of people are not aware of.
Yeah. So just to clarify, what I described aren't what we are today using Gen AI for. We are considering these as possible viable use cases. As of now, penetration of Gen AI especially in the financial sector is relatively low, and hopefully we'll make a dent in that. Now coming to the space that is out there. Uh, at a very broad brush, one of the simplest ways you can think of AI, at least generative AI, is that it's a force multiplier, right? It's a productivity tool for humans. So there's a lot of, let us say, more kind of traditional and very, let us say, repetitive and low creativity tasks that where things still need to be generated, like generating a document, generating a particular communication or anything else. Um, that's an area where we have seen utilizing generative AI's ability to understand a conversation, understand a set of information, documents, and business rules, and so on and so forth, and acting on that um, is quite viable, right? Now, the challenges that lie, though, is that generative AI does come with the risk of hallucination. And we have to always be careful about how the workflows around it are designed so that inadvertent bad decisions do not flow out through the system, right? Flow out through the output of generative AI directly out, and that's about application design rather than the core LLMs themselves.
How is generative AI poised to transform leadership roles and decision-making processes within the organization? I think you are one of the best examples to talk about this, so please go ahead.
Right. So, in some ways, this title did not exist until last year, right? It's only now that you have so many enterprises actually appointing chiefs and heads of AI. And that's because finally the world has woken up to the fact that AI can change the way business is done, and it is here not only to stay but to expand. So there are kind of two ways of thinking about how we want to apply leadership in transforming business using AI. So one is bottoms up, the other is top down. So in some sense, it is not always possible for leadership to understand how for every micro task, things can be accelerated by use of AI tools, right? And at first, when GPT 3.5 4 they came out, there were a lot of enterprises that were quite skeptical, and we saw this wave of AI skepticism where there was a phase where leaders used to be afraid of whether AI will lead to information leaks and all that. I think by and large we are over those fears, and now it's a matter of finding the right use cases. Now, one of the ways you can enable this is by enabling AI to every knowledge worker who actually needs to do something, and AI can help them in it. Great example is if somebody wants to code a particular piece of application, and it's a fairly straightforward algorithm that they're trying to code up. Then a lot of tools, lot of the LMs and other Gen AI tools have come to a point where you can prompt it by saying, "Oh, write me a bubble sort" or something like that, and you can actually do that. And now, is it perfect? No, but then uh, going from a starter code to getting something implemented and so on and so forth is easier than starting from scratch, right? So that's just an example where the usages come from bottom up, right? So you enable people with the tools, they take the tools, and then they just run with it. I mean, you know, and it's not just coding, right? I mean, somebody wants to write up a legal document, and it's a fairly standard document, let us say. And instead of writing the whole thing from beginning to end, you can just prompt it, and it gives you a fast framework, and on that you just make your edits and go further forward. So the role of leadership here can be twofold, right? So one is, first of all, making these tools safely available to everyone in the organization. Second is to then highlight the use cases that naturally, organically come up, and then to take it out to the rest of the organization as, let us say, champions, and see what happens. The other aspect to it is a more top-down aspect, which is to understand the workflows in an organization, to understand the business challenges that are in the way of taking them from where they are to where they can be, where they can outshine the competition, or the current state of the performance of the organization right now. And to get to there, it does need some level of leadership, some level of business understanding, some level of technology understanding, to put it all together and connect the dots intelligently to create frameworks, to create workflows, to create applications, and to create fine-tuned versions of generative AI algorithms that then, in association with other pieces, other source of data, other algorithms that can pre-process, post-process the pieces from it, and create the next generation of enterprise tools that takes the organization to a higher level of performance, to a higher level of functionality that returns better result, be it financial results in the sense of lending at lower default rate with higher return on assets, higher return on equity, and so on and so forth, with less people than were operationally necessary earlier. So that requires a top-down approach to understanding how GenAI fits in and can enhance current workflows.
What's your thought on actually creating a company out of building generative AI products?
There are two fundamental ways you can come at it, right? So one is from from the perspective of saying that, okay, this is a market that I understand. This is a type of activity, type of enterprise I understand. And having understood the needs, right, the customer needs, let me adapt what is already there, adapt and adopt what is already there in terms of generative AI capabilities, APIs and tools and so forth, and design just the perfect application that then takes this particular industry's workflow to the next level, where it performs it, at a better level and with less number of people. So that's one way you can come at it, where you're essentially looking at producing value on the application domain rather than in the technology domain. And there would obviously be, be a knowledge gap among people who understand how generative AI can actually produce the right results, how it can be uh, tuned and tweaked and modified so that it does not do any unwanted damage, and so on and so forth. And there is a there, and given how fast this industry is changing, just keeping up with all the techniques that are evolving in that field and adopting them in serving those use cases itself is a value add, right? So the other way you can come at it is where where you say that, okay, I want to be an expert in AI itself. I want to be an expert in generative AI. I want to take the current techniques of transformers and how those are strung up to make LLMs, make VLMs, make multimodal systems, and take it to the next level where I'm creating unique generative AI technology that takes it to the next level. Now, this second path, it can if there's a true breakthrough somebody does in that, then because the market has not yet coalesced on a, let us say, designated leader, although there is some leadership from OpenAI, but let us say it's not consolidated leadership, then the field is open for somebody to truly create unicorns by let us say breaking the envelope and going beyond and establishing themselves as a leader in a particular domain of generative AI technology. The only thing I would caution is that it is a big data and big compute game. It's limited by the amount of GPUs and or other advanced forms of compute that you can throw at it. OpenAI utilizes hundreds, tens of thousands for sure of GPUs running for quite a while to produce their results. But then there are other smaller models like Meta is heavily into the llama models, and we have seen good performance coming out of mixture of expert models from Mixtral and other places, where there is also a an alternative path that people are looking at in terms of smaller companies coming up with small language models and getting better at them. So that's the other area in which entrepreneurs can take their shot. The only thing I would caution is that your competitive advantage there does need to be based on hard science rather than understanding of use cases, the which was the first bucket that I mentioned.
What are the foundational skills which are crucial to be a contributor in the field of AI?
So there are two ways, you know, continuing on the two ways in which you can create new things in AI. So there are two different ways you can contribute in AI, right? So one is where you understand a particular industry very well, and you're using Gen AI to bring about use cases there that make a dent. The skill sets necessary there is first and foremost in understanding your industry, right? Understanding your customer pain points, understanding what is that one thing that, if done right, moves the needle. Um, the second part is keeping abreast of not only what is coming out new in the field of generative AI, but also What are the pros and cons of different models, different frameworks, different ways in which applications can be developed over AI? And then, of course, the execution skills of taking all these sets of APIs and libraries and data sources and so on and so forth, and being able to design and bring to market capable and robust applications that solve their workflow. So that's the skill set that you need for the first bucket, which is to deliver Gen AI powered applications that serve particular use cases in particular industries. In terms of the second bucket, which is to push the envelope on creating the next generations of Gen AI, or improving them in a particular domain, uh, that would require understanding of how the current technology works, right? Going all the way down to um, how your encoder decoder mechanisms work, how transformers work, how neural networks work, and quite frankly, the core prop stack theories that underlie why we um, we are seeing the type of let us say information enhancement that we are seeing in the first place. Now, while it's true that even today, actually, we don't have a classical, let us say, classical normative proof of why AI works. There are certain heuristics understanding which do lie on top of more accepted classical theories of information. So that requires the fundamental groundings in math and stat and information theory and so on and so forth. So those are the skill sets to have under your belt to go there. Not to mention, you also need the the execution skill sets, which is in terms of coding, in terms of building these distributed systems running on multiple GPUs and multiple petabytes of data, and all of the data engineering and the software coding aspects that go with it.
Got it. So, looking ahead, what emerging areas of AI should aspiring developers and technologies should focus on?
So this is a very fast changing field, right? So if you had asked anyone whether we would be at this level of conversational AI that we saw just, what is it, 3 days ago at the GPT-4o demo, I don't think anybody would have guessed we would be here this quickly. People would have guessed that we will be here, just that the speed at which this field is evolving, and the way we are discovering what is possible and what is hard is quite surprising. Um, so so that's a big caveat in terms of anybody's prediction at this moment of how and where we would be in 5 years is probably a little probably a little uncertain, right? Nobody knows the future, but a few things directionally I think we are going towards. So one is this push towards crossing the Turing bound, which is to build AI that interacts the same way that a human does, and that's an area in which most likely there would be a lot of work, and not just in terms of text understanding and text replies, but like we saw, audio understanding, video understanding, picture understanding. So in general, multimodal. So multimodal AI is an area where there would be a lot of developments and improvements. The other area, going beyond multimodal, is while what we have seen in terms of generative AI is surprising and let us say wow inducing. It's important to understand that we are still dealing with systems that are fundamentally machine learned systems, meaning we are we are we are designing the systems by having them predict the next tokens, and somehow these emerging properties are coming out. And the reason why we think these are emergent properties is because um, we ourselves are the type of contents we produce and the type of world we live in has a fair amount of determinism in it. We are essentially low information creatures who think we are high information creatures. Now that is very different from the way we understand the world. So, what I mean by understanding the world is the way we understand the laws of physics, the laws of mathematics, the way we take a set of observations and can generalize from it and come up with rules. So, this is still, the philosopher's stone that AI has not yet gone to. Big question is whether it will or not. And so this is AGI, right? Artificial general intelligence. I think whether AGI is possible or not, and whether it would be achieved quickly or not, will be a will be a will determine how this field evolves. You know, the fundamental technology on which today's AI is based on is actually not new. My first published neural network paper was all the way back in 1995. That's almost, what is it, 30 years ago. Um, and it took this long for a set of technology that was already, at least, let us say, its basic science of backpropagation learning neural networks was something that we had sort of begun to figure out that long ago. But it's only now that we are seeing it, getting to a point where we can truly call it AI, right? Which is what today's AI is. Now, is tomorrow's AI, AGI, something that is a linear interpolation from here, or whether it needs a more fundamental breakthrough? We don't know this. So is it now 30 years, or is it now 3 years? We don't know this. So that's why when and where we get to AGI is a big question mark. And if we do, then we are looking at a very different trajectory of what will be done with AI. If we don't, then generative AI is essentially a productivity tool, right? And improvements that are wrought by productivity tools are, while they can be substantial, like calculators were a productivity tool, right? And they remove the burden of doing hand calculations. So similarly, uh, generative AI is a productivity tool. While it is wonderful and it can make productivity that much easier, uh, it would not quite get to the point where it can build on top of itself in the way an AGI machine can. And so it would, at some point of time, simply be a part of our work habits and be integrated into everything the same way we have all these other productivity tools like computers and video communications like this integrated into our work habits. Um, so that's a big big question mark, right? In terms of more, let us say, deterministic things that we can sort of see where the trajectory is going. One of them is, like I mentioned, AI going from atomic usages to agentic usage, where you actually ask AI to create an application, and that application actually runs and does things that are a lot more deterministic and a lot less subject to hallucination than atomic usages of AI. This is something that is clearly an area where it can be taken to um, more robust and kind of formulatory structures where there would probably be entire ecosystems built around creating, training, building, maintaining agentic AI structures. And it'll probably be something that will diversify and be an industry almost by itself, the same way enterprise software became an industry by itself. Because almost every single industry use cases, they would need their own agent, right? So there would be a whole lot of people who would become experts in these agentic formulations, and there would be businesses built around them. There would be today's startups that will, some of whom will become tomorrow's Microsofts and other companies that will recreate tomorrow's enterprise applications as AI agentic applications. So that's a little more deterministic, not deterministic, but that's, I think, a little more predictable future that we can probably predict with a higher level of certainty. So yeah.
What's the biggest misconception about working in AI? Are there any myths that you would want to bust? Are there certain untold things that you would want to share with us?
So the biggest one I would say is that we somehow have to be afraid of AI. There's a lot of let us say doomsayers about how AI is going to take over the world, how AI would kind of become this master that is going to rule over humans, and somehow it's leading to a new species that we are creating that will go out of hand. Sort of like the Space Odyssey film, right? That I think will never happen. And I know that there are a lot of AI pioneers who came out and cautioned the world. But if you think about it from a very pragmatic perspective, at the end of the day, after all said and done, AI is just a piece of software that runs on the server. Uh, while we humans live and act and do things on our own free volition in the physical world.
All right. So, can you like describe, let's say, a day in life of someone working in the field, which is, heavily influenced by Gen AI? How has it changed from the last 5 years or so?
So, in many ways, Gen AI hasn't been around that long, right? And a lot of the adoptions have only happened in the last 18 months to a couple of years. Um, but I'll probably give you an example that precedes LLM. Uh, this was quite some time ago in 2018 when the Transformer paper was still pretty new. I was heading AI for a fashion e-commerce company, and we had almost like an experimental project, which was about using the the images that we had of the type of clothing that was selling well, and trying to create very close clones of them that were not exact copies but followed the same, let us say, image genre. And we were able to do this with fairly, what now feels like fairly primitive technology, like GANs and attention GANs and so on and so forth. And what it did is we could then generate these pictures of a potential fashion design automatically using AI, and then give it to the designers, and the designers can could basically take that, tweak it somewhat in order to make it more realistic, and something that could be easily manufactured and so on and so forth, and then push it out. Now, how that changed their lives is, before that, designers needed to understand trends, and then they needed to think and come up with what were called inspirations. So both of these were a lot of, let us say, heavy thinking activity, and it needed a lot of creative muscles to be deployed by these designers to get there. And once we did this, a lot of that activity could be short circuited, because essentially what AI was giving them were what they would call inspirations, which was, here's a storyboard of these other type of designs that you can take and use. And they were just able to take them, tweak them, use them, and shorten that whole time cycle of designing something to a trend that we just detected, and something coming out. Um, so things like these, are becoming are crossing many industries now, right? Becoming more prevalent. Like, I gave you an example early on of how at a previous company I built applications where generative AI was used for voice conversations, to order burgers and fries and other kind of fast food at its fast food chains. So this is something where, for 50, 70 years, whatever, these minimum wage fast food workers were used to taking these orders over a voice channel, and then cooking it, and delivering, and then suddenly they had a much simpler life, right? They could concentrate only on cooking and serving the food, and rather than on the voice conversations with a customer to take orders and stuff like that, right? So so these changes are happening, and this is just a couple of examples. I mean, pretty much any industry you look at where there is a human in the loop of information processing, that human's life can be impacted, can be simplified by use of AI. And they're just these are just opportunities waiting to be exploited by the right entrepreneurs, by the right thinkers, by the right doers in each of these industries.
So, how do you predict Gen AI's impact in careers for people who would want to make a career in tech?
Yeah, I mean, if you ask people like Sam Altman, he has a fairly, let us say, pessimistic view about white collar careers, right? That potentially most functions that humans are needed for in terms would probably get replaced, right? Um, So my prediction on this is a lot more toned down, right? So first of all, I do agree that any career which depends purely on information processing is probably going to be impacted by AI. We'll probably need less of those workers and a more usage of AI, and that may separate, the few who truly understand the design and formulation of the problem and know how to then use AI to get those formulated problems out into deployable forms that does not need as much human intervention. So those people would would have a good career, right? They would thrive, while people whose tasks are getting automated, meaning people who are probably in the more used to more regular regular kind of routine jobs of information processing, they would probably be not needed as much because with the right Gen AI application in place, it's just it's just the same way that you no longer need people using abacus to count additions and multiplications, right? So they would probably get impacted. So that's the way I think to think about the razor, right? So think about if your job is purely about information processing, as opposed to doing something very physical, like if your job is like laying bricks, probably at least today's AI cannot probably do that. Eventually, maybe we'll have robotic applications of AI, which maybe, but still, let's say with what we are calling generative AI in that context, no, right? But if your job is about, oh, I am uh, reading these sets of documents and so on and so forth and summarizing it or making slides, making marketing content, making um, uh, reaching out to to a set of contacts on in with very regular information and those kind of things. Yes, those can certainly be automated, and those are probably not worthwhile carriers to pursue.
So two more, interesting and final set of questions for you, Dr. Banerjee. Number one is, what's a bold prediction that you have for Gen AI's impact over the next few decades?
So, one thing I'd like to emphasize here is that while most people are thinking about Gen AI as something that would reduce human participation in the economy, and as a result, perhaps unemployment and so on and so forth, my prediction is exactly the opposite. Without any question, Gen AI would be a net job creator and would probably be one of the engines that would drive the overall human experience, and as a result, the human economy, this planet's economy, to its next level. Uh, and the reason is very simple. Um, if you remember, or maybe you've heard of it, that about 30, 40 years ago, people used to think about computers the same way that people are thinking about Gen AI, that computers are going to, once they're deployed, they're going to take away the job of people who are doing the same thing by hand on a piece of paper, right? What happened? Computers turned out to be a net job creator, right? And it also created winners and losers. There were, I mean, even in India, there were parts of India that were more aggressive in terms of banning computers than others, while others were adopting them more freely. And the areas that run computers today are laggards when it comes to their IT industries and so on and so forth, while those who adopted are now becoming the new whatever new IT hubs and Silicon Valleys and whatever you may call it. Now, similar things will happen with Gen AI. Those who will adopt Gen AI and run with it and build applications with it and make people's lives better, they will reap the benefits. At the end of the day, it is a physical world, and when you produce value from that world in a way that is profitable and so on and so forth, then you end up with these sets of value created that has their return, and those value created returns, they will give you they will give you the return you expect, right? And so net Gen AI is going to be a uh, a net creator of jobs and GDP in the world's economy. But it would not be uniform. It would depend on where people adopted them versus where people did not.
In what ways do you anticipate Gen AI influencing everyday life in the near future?
Um, so we would probably become more open to the presence of these, let us say, robotic creatures among us in ways that today we are not. And part of that will happen invisibly, and part of it will happen visibly. And most likely, more of it will happen invisibly, where a lot of Gen AI applications will be under the hood, so to say, and less of it will appear in a way where it is visible. But that said, uh, you know uh, ChatGPT, for example, is a very visible application, right? And those will probably increase. So there would be probably more prevalent Gen AI agents like the ones we saw with GPT 4.0 that would be there, and that would continue to coexist. And over the next few years, I think we will start treating them less as novelties and more as an everyday companion. The same way, for example, Google search is not a novelty, it's just a necessity. Google Maps is not a novelty, it's just a necessity. Similarly, very soon there would be generative AI applications that would just natively live with us that are not novelties. So yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much, Dr. Banerjee, for having this conversation with me today. It was really lovely listening to you about certain tidbits of information about the Gen AI industry, which is not essentially found if we do a web search. So I feel the conversation was very fruitful as part to be able to share it with people who really needs this conversation, who needs to understand how the business of Gen AI works, how to really look at the industry, and how to chart out the opportunities. I really enjoyed this conversation and would lovely to be hosting you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Varsha, and thank you for hosting me in this podcast.
Thank you.